Happy Thursday. Welcome to Thursday Thoughts with that Ed Law lady. It's me, your host, Nkoyo, principal attorney at the F. Young firm, where we advocate for educational equity and economic justice alongside communities of color. And we specifically do this in the area of education, representing parents and students in education matters, as well as providing subscription legal services to mission-aligned charter schools and independent schools who want to make sure that they are protecting equity and leading with anti-racism in their policies and practice. So, y'all, it's been a week. I don't know about the rest of you, but I have felt just about every range of emotion possible this past week. And I know it's Thursday, but I mean, I am exhausted. I was exhausted on Monday. Like, the stuff that we're dealing with, the stuff that we're watching is equal parts disheartening, traumatic, painful, and also in some ways really inspiring and uplifting. Like, to see all of these protests happening across the country, in other countries, has been amazing to see the stand of solidarity that people have taken and the different steps that people have attempted, even on social media with this like Blackout Tuesday situation and other places where people have just been reaching out and trying to engage, trying to learn more, trying to develop a better understanding of like how they can move forward. And so today I'm really going to spend my time talking about how we can move forward, and what it means to do the work and what that means for those of us who are entering into this work for the first time, maybe having not really seen or understood how dire and offensive the situation is, to those who have been in it for a while and are maybe feeling fed up and tired and frustrated. And I specifically also want to make sure that I'm centering this conversation around not just what's going on in our criminal justice system, but the fact that every single system in this country is infected by racism and the systemic inequalities that occur as a result. And so we have to really be thoughtful about a solution that doesn't put pressure on other systems, or that doesn't include or contemplate other systems in this process. And so, again, my entry point is education. I am a former fourth grade teacher. I taught in Fulton County here in Georgia. I went on to coach teachers with an education nonprofit. I have represented major school districts, and currently in my practice, like I mentioned earlier, I work with families and I work with charters and independent schools who want to get it right. And getting it right is difficult, right? It requires us to do a lot of deep internal work that has to be done before we can actually really see the fruits of that in external work, and making sure that when we even put the work into action, that we are consistently thinking about how we are ensuring that we continue being anti-racist, that we continue being inclusive, that we think about diversity not just as a numbers game, and that we do the tough work that equity requires. Because let me be clear, equity requires us allocating funds differently for different groups because of the different ways that our society has elevated or held down those groups. So I want to be very clear, because sometimes people like to have a soft conversation about everybody's created equal, we're all the same, and that is true. The reality, though, is the way that this country has set up has not treated everyone the same and has created additional pressures for certain communities versus others. And in order to get to equality, we're going to have to do equitable things, which means everybody's not getting the same amount. So that's where I start. That's where I want to make sure people are very clear that when we talk about really doing this work, we're talking about making difficult decisions. We're talking about allocating funds in ways that are not the same for everyone, because, again, we have to close gaps that we have allowed a system to perpetuate. The other thing I want to say is, I've been fortunate to have certain privileges as a Black woman in this country. I'm very well educated. I've had the opportunity to attend some of this country's most elite institutions. But I've also seen what happens in other communities. And so I want to also call out where my privilege and my bias may impact my viewpoint, because again, I think we only get to where we need to be when we're all part of the conversation. So I just shared that like sometimes I have blind spots, and I don't want those of you who are following along to think that you have to be perfect or that I'm going to be perfect and always have the answer, because I most certainly will not. I am learning and leaning in and reflecting and evaluating and dealing with difficult conversations with myself, just like I hope that anyone watching this video is doing as well. I should throw out my legal disclaimer again. I'm not really going to provide any legal advice in this conversation anyway, but again, I am a practicing attorney, and this video and all of my videos that I do with that Ed Law Lady are solely for educational purposes. But one of the things I want to also make sure that I say is that we all have a place in the movement. We all have a role to play, and everybody is not the activist who's in the streets with the bullhorn, who is laying down on the ground, getting arrested, so on and so forth. And that's okay. Wherever your place of entry is, what's most important is that you're committed to doing the work, you're willing to listen and learn, and that you're trying to grow with a community. And I say that because sometimes I think people who have been steeped in equity work for a long time are righteously frustrated, and I fully accept that as well. But we have to make sure that we're making space for everyone and recognizing that everyone's entry point is different. I say that also because this Monday I had the opportunity to be on a call held by Hype Girl Entertainment, and it's the sister series. And it was a multicultural conversation just about what's going on. And hearing people from different backgrounds share their concern about saying the right thing, or, you know, being flagged as racist or whatever, was really eye-opening to me to hear. And recognizing again that it shouldn't be the emotional or mental labor of Black people to help make sure that everybody understands and is coming along. And I will be very clear about this, racism is not a Black problem. Racism was not created by Black people. We actually are the unfortunate recipients of that. And therefore, those who have created this system have an important role to play in solving the problem. So I'm not here to say that as Black people, we are responsible for educating all of those around to make sure everybody understands what this issue is and how to address it. But I also want to say that we can't also walk away and just tell everybody to like Google it or, you know, get the resource and read, because everybody needs an entry point. And, you know, I used to study Spanish. I was fluent for a period of time. I just don't practice. But when you're learning a language, you have to have a place to practice, because otherwise you'll never get to the point of fluency. And so as an educator, I would never tell a student who was trying to learn how to read to go online and like, you know, get the resources, everything's available to you. I would direct them. I would provide you with a launching place. And I'm not going to say for, you know, I have a lot of people who listen to this that everybody is going to be willing to do that or that everybody should. I just want to also call out that we have to make space and we have to extend grace for people who are learning, recognizing that nobody is perfect, that nobody owns racism in the way that they are the only people who have the ability to speak out around its effects. I think one of the devastating parts of Brown v. Board of Education, which was a seminal case in education law stating that, you know, again, giving this integration directive requiring that all schools be desegregated with all deliberate haste, was that they focused just on the effects of racism on Black people. And they didn't talk at all about the same study that showed that racism negatively affects white people as well. And I feel like we've been moving forward as a society with this assumption that it only affects some people and not others, when actually the data, the research show that everybody is harmed by racism and its effects. So all that is to say, you know, we're jumping here. I am in the ed space. My goal is to, in my lifetime, help to dismantle systemic racism, classism, sexism, all of the isms, truthfully, in the education space. And at my firm, we do that in a couple of ways because, again, I think it's more important to talk about and actually do the work than just talk about wanting to be a part. So at my firm, we do that in a couple of ways. We teach mothers of children of color. So if you have a child of color and you are a mother, and specifically mothers, because usually those are the folks who come to us, but any parent or caretaker, we teach you how to effectively advocate for your children in school through a monthly advocacy membership group. And we do that specifically because when you are a parent of a child of color, your child is more likely to experience exclusionary discipline on account of race. The data is abundantly clear. It's not really up for debate. Like, children of color get harsher punishment, whether they are boys or girls, they get harsher punishment. And so we want to protect your ability to be in school. We know that if your child is a child of color and has special needs, he or she is often mislabeled, or if they are properly labeled, you tend to have difficulty getting adequate supports and services for them. So we want to disrupt in that space because intersectionality is a whole other complex issue, and being Black and disabled is a different experience than not. And so we want to provide support for that community, and that's specifically dear to my heart, near and dear to my heart, because I have a child who is on the spectrum, and every day we have to fight several different types of fights on different levels to make sure that he's treated with dignity, that he's safe, and that he's actually getting access to a curriculum that will allow him to meet his potential. So again, we have a membership there. There is a cost for the membership, but it's really extremely reasonable given all of the things that we do in that membership to equip every parent who joins with the ability to advocate effectively and ensure that their child gets a quality education. And we focus a lot on education because we know that education is a revolutionary act. It is the best form of self-defense, defense spending that any country can do, and it really has the power to open doors for all children. And because we also believe in economic justice, we want to make sure that children of color are set up to be able to live self-sustaining lives as well. So that's one way that we show up and we help. The other way that we show up is that we offer proactive subscription-based legal services for equity-focused independent and charter schools. So what we see is that a lot of people set up to start a school in certain communities. They want to help children who've been disadvantaged, typically Black and brown children, but they don't have access to legal services at a reasonable rate, a reasonable and predictable rate that also shares that same alignment. And I can speak and preach on it because I have definitely gone up against firms, worked at firms where there were a lot of questions about what people's underlying beliefs were about the children that we were supporting. And so our firm really tries to play in that space to allow you to at least have an option of having an attorney and a firm that's committed to your equity goals, and where you can have real, candid conversations about whether we're really doing the best things for children and that we're being anti-racist and pro family in the decisions that we're making, from policies to discipline to even how we are interacting with our staff. So those are two ways that we specifically show up in the education space. And then the third place is that I, again, the educator in me, am 1,000% committed to having and providing education in and around what's going on in our public education system, and making sure that people are thinking about that from an equity lens and not just, what the budget says or things of that sort. And so I am a lifelong learner myself. I'm always trying to gain more information to make sure that I'm making better decisions, so that I'm parenting better. I'm parenting through an equity and anti-racist lens, because you can, growing up in this culture, make decisions or do things with your own family or in your own practice based on fundamentally flawed reasoning that you've seen because of this racist system that we are in. And so I definitely am always trying to check my bias to make sure that I'm raising kids that are going to be able to live freely, right? Like just being able to give my kids, I have two black boys, the opportunity to be children in a society that doesn't always see them as such, and also make sure that this society is better. So, with that, this is a long way to say we are actually starting. I know I have thrown this out there on my social media, the Advocateur. It is a digital learning village and platform to have candid and courageous conversations, to share information and resources. And starting next week, we are going to be jumping into our June series, which is Reform is Not Justice. And I'm really excited about this. It's really pushed me, as someone who's often talked about ed reform, to think about whether ed reform is actually going to lead to educational justice, which would lead to liberty, which would lead to people actually having their full citizenship in this country. And so over the next few weeks, we're going to explore why reform falls short and how, especially in this time, we need something more than to just, quote, tinker in the trivial. So if that's something that incites your earbuds, I encourage you to join the Advocateur online membership. You'll get our weekly emails. We have events and different things that we put out that are marketed straight through there so that you can get in the know, learn about some of the courses. The again, the membership for parents is information is shared through there as well. So I just encourage you to walk with us, to journey with us, to do the hard work, to do the heart work, but most importantly, to continue to do the work, because when this issue is no longer sexy and no longer in the media, we still need people engaged. We still need people coming together to make sure that we see true change and not just one conviction, but that we don't have this problem going on and moving forward. So with that, I hope you have a great rest of the day, a great weekend, and I hope to see you on these internet streets and jump into your inbox and share some great information and open up dialogue. All right, take care.